So let's start this morning, shall we? Enough of the small talk. Let's turn to 252. 252. His banner over me is love. Or we can stand. If you're able to stand, let's stand. Let's sing. Jesus is the rock of my salvation. His banner over me is love. Jesus is the rock of my salvation. His banner over me is love. Jesus is the rock of my salvation. His banner over me is love. His banner over me is love. Let's sing it again. Jesus is the rock of my salvation. His banner over me is love. Jesus is the rock of my salvation. His banner over me is love. Jesus is the rock of my salvation. His banner over me is love. His banner over me is love. All right, you may be seated.
All right. The Acts of the Apostles, chapter 21. Let us go ahead. We will get started and see where we are led today. Today I'm going to preach on the Bible. So, I try to do that at least once a year. So we'll preach on the Bible today. And, there's some things I just don't want to do. It's like getting excited about it. I don't want to preach the stuff, that you need it more than your necessary food. It's type of food and list all the stuff. And all the stuff you already know. That just, and I hate to do repeats, There's no repeat, so everything's new. But I wanted to get excited about it because we need to get excited about reading our Bible. You can never know it ever too well. And the more we know it, it's kind of like my banjo instructor is, I said, well, can I do this? And then he said, oh, you mean this? And he does it like nothing. And that's not the banjo is really not his instrument. He does all kinds of instruments, but he does it like he's been doing it forever because he's been doing it forever. But we need to get in our Bible like that so that we really, really know it. Really, really know it. Anyway, Acts 21, Father, bless our lesson today and just nourish us with it. And that we would be edified by it today. In Christ's name, amen. Verse 17, and when we were come to Jerusalem, the brethren received us gladly. That's where we ended last week, on this gladly. I drove Scarlett, the wife and I were going to drive Scarlett over together. This is out in Brunswick, and it's really near Hinckley. And when I think of Brunswick, when I think of Brunswick, I'm thinking more of Spencer. And what's beyond Spencer? Buffalo. Yeah, it's all flat. Yeah, it's Spencer, and there's not much past that. Brunswick. What's past that? Oh, if you're going a little north, you're in Elyria. There is, I bought my car out there. What's south of Elyria?
Amherst.
No, it wasn't Amherst.
Worcester.
Wasn't Worcester. It goes between there.
What's that one in Strongsville?
It's between there and Elyria.
Mont Chalet?
No, it wasn't Richfield.
Litchfield.
No, no, you mean big enough to buy a car, or maybe big enough to have that lot?
Yeah, the guy was a barber, and he had several cars.
Where you bought the coupe?
Where
I
about?
thought that was like out Vermillion one.
No, south of Elyria.
Norwalk?
What happened?
Waitman?
It's near Grafton.
Waitman.
No,
Yeah, I did.
no. Well, you're naming everything around it.
Brentwood Lake,
Belton.
Overland,
I want to say LaGrange. It's or the one right next to LaGrange. Anyway,
Pittsfield.
I drove out there and I pulled out my maps and my Medina map, Lorraine map, and then on the way, so I said, oh, we're really early. I like to be early. And so we got to Route 3 there at the top of the hill, 3 and 82. And I didn't want to go past the shopping center. We didn't have to go. I didn't realize it wasn't that as far out as I thought. And so there's a diagonal road up Bennett.
Uh-huh.
So I drove Bennett down, and that's not the way I highlighted it.
It's North Royalton.
Yeah, at North Royalton there. So I drove Bennett down, and anyway, I got there, and I said, oh, this is where Grandma lived, and my uncle lived on, they lived on Drake. Probably all those homes are all bulldozed. And she lived in not much more than a cottage. They had well water. I'm sure it's not that way anymore.
No.
And I was tempted, if we go back out there, to go down Drake and see if I can see my grandmother's house. I mean, it was just a little hut of a place. And we arrived, and there wasn't even a soul. There was one truck. So I think all the kids were already there, and she was afraid. If she was, I am getting to the point. I'm not wandering. I'm getting to the point. And she went in the church. There was a couple little kids. There was a guy there. He said, "Oh, I've been coming here since 1969." And then, I said, "Oh, here comes the tall guy," which would be who? Greg Davis came out. So the preacher came out. So he must have known I was there. And he came out. And I don't think I have seen him 20 years. Oh, I saw him at a funeral, if you call that seeing him. I don't know if I even spoke to him. Was that his mother-in-law's funeral? Was his mother-in-law's funeral? Pardon? Oh yeah, he was there too. That's right, but I don't even know if I talked to him. And then, but no, we saw him at his mother-in-law. What's his mother-in-law? Stanlaw. So, but he came out, and I said to the guy in the truck, as the windows were down, I said, "Oh, here comes the tall guy." Now I just referred to him as the tall guy. So he was walking over, and I said, "Hello, Pastor," and he said, "Hello, Pastor." So we had a good chat. So, getting back to this, brethren received us gladly. It was like I haven't spoke to him in at minimum of 20 years. He was here for our dedication, 2001. So how many years ago was that? 17 years ago, when we dedicated the building. He was here for that, and I did speak to him for that. It's about 17 years ago. I mean, it's been a while. And we talked about the billboard. By the way, I want to announce I already talked to Nathan. He downloaded, we need to work that. He downloaded all the artwork off the billboard, so that's here. We're going to go forward and get the Brook Park Road, Libby Road, Route 17. What's the name of that street? Brook Park?
On the west side of Brook Park.
It's Brook Park. You know where it is. Is that in Parma? Actually in Parma proper?
Oh, the one at Brook Park and State, yes, that's in Parma proper.
That is in Parma.
One side of Brook Park is Cleveland, the other side is Parma. You'll see it from the Cleveland side of Brook Park.
Okay, so those billboards all run the same. They're permanent on one side, a vinyl one that they periodically change, but the other side is scrolling. It's the scrolling side. I don't know how many scrolls it is. It's over 30,000. And we're gonna do that, and then, I always sign the contract. We're gonna sign the paper, sign the paper. And then, but Nathan said they'll let us either move the billboard, let's say we don't like it, we can move the billboard, or we can cancel it. I mean, it's not gonna be the end of the world. It's not like they're gonna drag us into court. So we can always cancel it if we have to, but we sign the papers. Lamar, I don't think it's a Clear Channel, or if Lamar's part of Clear Channel, I'm not sure. Anyway, it'll be on the west side. So Greg Davis and I were talking about that, the 60-second tracks. We were talking about his billboard, and the reason they're going to put one up again, and the reason why they haven't been putting a particular one up and all. But we had a real good chat. It was received gladly, and so we had a real nice chat. Anyway, the report of Paul, and that is our outline, these R words here. So the report of Paul, he gives it verses 18 and 19. So I gave a report that day following Paul went in with us unto James and all the elders present. When we had saluted them, he declared particularly what things God had wrought among the Gentiles by his ministry. So a report was given. I told him, I said, we didn't really want to preach to the choir. You know, these guys get on 1420 or 1220, and it's by far cheaper. You buy blocks by 15 minutes or half hour. We buy it by the second, 60 seconds. And it is a lot more expensive. I said, I'd like to do that again. We don't know when, but I want to do 5 more so we can do a full month. And people actually looked forward to it. We had lots of responses from people that were lost that knew me, that I hadn't seen in a long time. So there is a report that can always be given. Once that thing goes up on Brook Park, we personally may not hear about, but people will give a report on that. Give a report on it. Such as Greg Davis's billboard. I've never seen it, but I heard and was given a report on it. But Paul gives the report. Acts 11. It's just like in anything. You have a business meeting, a report is given. Would you give a report in school? Who here enjoyed giving a report?
I hated to write, so I'd rather give an oral report.
You hated to write,
Yeah.
but your preference was an oral report. I always say, the wife and I talk about it, and you missed your calling. I know you like electronics and all, but you should have been a talk show host or something, and giving an oral report. Now, who likes to give reports more in English or on the book? Is it girls or boys? The girls. What I observed, the girls would always do better than the boys. When it was time to give her a report, if they did it in alphabetical order, I was really hopeful the girls would take a real long time, because if we ran out of time, then we could, the school would let out.
Delay the pain.
Huh?
Delay the pain.
Yeah, delay the pain. Or I had suffered waiting, Or if they went in order of chair, I would count the chairs. I would literally do that. I hated it. But he gave the report, but he's amongst friends. And they the teacher tries to convince you, we are amongst friends. And so on. So giving the report, let's see, it says here in verse 4 of Acts 11, Paul rehearsed the matter from the beginning and expounded it by order unto them, saying. This is when right after Cornelius is saved, the Gentiles are coming in, and he gives this report, he rehearses it, he gives the report because they're really going to be antagonistic about this. So he gives the report, just like a report's given there. The Jerusalem Council is Acts 15. They give a report, and do they give the report before the entire assembly or no? They give the report not before the entire assembly. They give it before a select few to kind of test it out to see how the rest of everybody's going to take it first. Work some bugs out maybe in the report. Not that's what they did. Then they told everybody about it after. So the report of Paul. Those are all good methods that should be used. Things are talked out ahead of time before it's given before the everybody else. And now, verse 20, Acts 20, verse 20. The response that's given, Paul, verse 20, and when they heard it, they glorified the Lord. And so Acts 11:18, if we go back there, they did the same thing. 11:18, after Peter's report, now they which scattered, let's see. Verse 18. When they heard these things, they held their peace and glorified God, saying, in other words, they gave them reason. They heard these things, they glorified God. Acts 15, this is the Jerusalem, what we call the Jerusalem Council. Acts 15, verse 3, and being brought on their way by the church they passed through, they, declaring the conversion of the Gentiles, verse 3, and they caused great joy unto all the brethren. Great joy. The response given, Paul. You've got in Congress right now those that are giving reports on the Democratic side, and this stuff is actually being received by the far left leadership, and saying this, what's her name, Cortez? What is this girl's name?
I don't know.
I don't either.
Ocasio-Cortez.
Cortez.
They call her AOC now.
And they said that she is, I don't know all the details, that she said that she was going to Congress to sign bills. I know. And then they said a year ago one person said she was, just a year ago, she was flipping iced teas. Because she's a barmaid. And that she was going to Congress to sign bills. I mean, it just shows the ignorance of people. Isn't it amazing they're in charge?
She has a degree in accounting.
I know, she can't add subtract. Yeah. She wants to get rid of planes and have high-speed train.
High-speed rail.
High-speed rail. What's the fastest rail on the planet?
The Japanese railroad has one that's like, they got those bullet trains that go up to 200, I think.
Up to 200.
Yeah.
Well, she wants to get rid of airplanes. I don't know the details, but now I heard somebody says that the physics of this hasn't been accomplished yet. So she must want to go 500 miles an hour. What's going to happen to that train?
Costs a lot of money, but gets you nowhere.
It's not going to get you nowhere, and you're going to derail.
Yeah.
If there were derailments with those steam engines, there's going to be a ton of derailment. And on this is going. But as far as the report and the response, she's actually getting a response from this now. Some journalist came out and said, well, this is equivalent to high school level. In like a high school report about this green, I wouldn't even call it high school. I don't know what it is today. But it's wild. This is what's in charge.
It's science fair.
It's science fiction. So this guy from Venezuela, what was his occupation? Anybody know? Not the one that's coming up with the Civil War, the one that was in power. I'm pretty sure he was a bus driver. I mean, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. The response given Paul is that they glorified God, great joy. Now, our concern is not political issues. Our concern should always be in presenting our Lord Jesus and how that's presented, how people read us, how we present him, how it comes across, and the great joy that that it should give in people who respond to it. And that's where our joy should come from. Not whether Trump's in charge or this Cortez is in charge. Listen, this isn't going anywhere. The only way, and if it does go somewhere, well, Mrs. Tucker, we don't have to worry about getting to the retirement center. They're just going to kick us out of our house. That'll be the end result. Everybody's going to get kicked out. She wants to rebuild all the buildings in the entire country.
She wants to get rid of cows too.
Get rid of what?
Cows.
Oh yeah, you have to get rid of cows because they can't be doing their thing yet.
I'm around people who deny Christ all the time.
That do what?
Deny Christ.
Oh, well then,
I'm around them
so
all the time.
so my response to you now, this man right here, he just gave his report. So my response to you, Rich, is, the report of Paul, the response given Paul, is, well, praise the Lord, you are the light they see. You are a light that's as a city on a hill. And so and they don't see me, they see you. And so you are just to be there as a constant reminder that Jesus is Lord. Jesus is the Lord. And so Nathan wanted to know what billboards to put up. I said, have them pull out all the old ones out, like the hand that points. Jesus died for you. I mean, that is pointing. We want, what I'd eventually like to do is, if we increase this 3 or 4 or so, is you could run it on a whole week on the 480 bridge itself. And you put a new one up every day. I don't know if they would do that. And by the way, what does talk to get that to happen? Money. Yeah, God owns a cattle on 1,000. Just that's not going to happen. That's not. Now, I don't think the high-speed rails are going to happen. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Well, people could say there would never be a church here. I would hang out in that building in the corner. There was paint everywhere in that building. Paint, spray paint, hand paint, all over the floor. And I'd stand in the corner there and I'd say, I'm going to preach the gospel from here one day. That's 30 years ago. And did it happen? It happened, right? Slowly but surely. The reputation of Paul, verses 20 through 22. When they heard it, they glorified the Lord and said unto him, Thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews which there are which believe, and they are all zealous of the law. All right? And they are informed of thee that thou teachest all the Jews which are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, saying that they ought not to circumcise their children, neither to walk after the customs. What is it therefore? The multitude must needs come together, for they will hear that thou art come. Okay, so verses 20 through 22 is the reputation of Paul. Is the reputation that is given you, is it accurate? Or is it inaccurate? Is it half-truths? What is it? What is the reputation that's given Paul? Is it partly true, somewhat true, totally false, or altogether true? Which is it? We get a reputation. There's that Grimm's fairy tale. The Grimm's, I think it's a Grimm's fairy tale. It's the cobbler or the baker. He gets a fly swatter, and how many flies does he kill? There, you remember it. You saw it as a kid. I saw it. He kills 7 at one time with how many blows?
7 with 1 blow.
I killed 7 with 1 blow. Well, he goes down the street saying, I killed 7 with 1 blow. I killed 7 with 1 blow. Right? And he got what? A reputation.
Yeah.
But they didn't know it was 7 flies.
Yeah.
Did they just give him an assignment?
Yeah, they wanted him to slay the dragon.
He has to slay the dragon or the giant. Well,
Yeah.
somebody. He's got to get the bad guy.
There was a Mickey Mouse cartoon version of that
Okay, I killed 7, oh, Mickey Mouse was the 7.
He was the
Fly
Michael
killer.
Taylor or whatever.
Oh, it was the tailor. Yeah, I killed, is that a Grimm's fairy tale?
I don't know.
But you get a reputation. You get a reputation that generally is either they bring it down or they build it up. Well, they got Paul saying you need to quit all this. That Paul forbid practicing the law of Moses and that the Jews should forsake the customs, but such was not the case. The only way Paul handled the law and custom was that you cannot get saved or stay saved by the law or its customs. That's what he did. Because when he has Timotheus, when he meets him, what does he do with him? What did he do when he meets him in it's Acts 16? And his father was a Greek, his mother was a Jew. What does Paul do with him? He has him circumcised. It wasn't that it saved him, it was his way of becoming all things to all men. Is that he didn't forbid the circumstances, but he forbid the there's a way I phrase it. There's a way I phrase that. Paul was not opposed to circumcision, but he was opposed to the imposing of it. You can do it, but you don't have to do it. All right? Because he was half Jew and half Gentile, he became all things to all men. Now, this is what he does through here, when he's going to go and do this vow. Is it wrong to practice the law of the Jews? Obviously, for salvation it is. Is it wrong to practice the law of the Jews? If you go back 500 years, who practiced that and lived? And those that didn't practice it died. I'm pretty sure there's truth to this. 500 years ago, if you practiced the law of the Jews, you lived. Physically lived. And if you did not practice the law of the Jews, you died. The plague. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know if these are just rumors, that the Gentiles then hated the Jews all the more because they lived. And the Gentiles were dying because they did not practice it. And being clean, cleaning up, getting rid of the rats, and so on. What did they do in the plague? Did they kill the rats? The fleas? What did they kill? I'm pretty sure I heard this. No, I don't know if these are rumors. What did they? They killed the cats. Because, black cats will, they're probably practicing witchcraft. It must be the cats. They killed the cats that were eating the rats. I mean, how dumb do you get,
Kill the exterminator.
You killed the exterminator. Okay, all right, Acts 16. Paul was not opposed to circumcision, but he was opposed to the imposing of it. I don't know why I went there. It's printed right here. The Jews, Moses, have a lot of good customs. There must be, I've never read, I'm not overly interested in it, even though I should be. There's probably books out on it, why you shouldn't eat a pig. I mean, there's got to be some spiritual reasons to this, folks. I mean, he just doesn't select this stuff. And why you eat certain fish, bottom feeders, not feeders, scales, no scales. He just doesn't randomly do that. There's got to be reasons for this. So it's good to wash your hands in running water, Leviticus 14, verse 5. I don't feel led to go to all of these verses to look them up. It's there. It's good to wash your hands in running water, not stagnant water, running water. Running water. It's good to abstain from pork. Eating the pig. Now, we had pork the other day, but you shouldn't have it for breakfast, lunch, and supper. It's good to harbor no grudges. if you harbor a grudge, it is rottenness to your, there's probably a proverb about it. It's rottenness to your what? Sister's right. Yeah, I think it's rottenness, it rots the bones. Basically, your soul, your bones. I mean, it's just right to the core of it. To hold a grudge. It's good to, in other words, move on. It's good to honor your mother and father, because if you do, it's the first commandment with promise. And what's that promise?
Long life.
A long life.
They won't kill you.
Yeah, they won't kill you.
you.
Yeah, it's good to abstain from blood. It's good to abstain from blood. We would drain anything we killed. We always drained it. Abstain from blood. It's good to abstain from incest. These are all things that are in the law, folks. You shouldn't be doing that stuff. And those that did it in the land of Canaan, we're going to go there tonight. Not for this particular topic, but the land of Canaan. What did God do with all those people? He killed them. He got rid of them. They were driven out of the land. They were not to do the things that they did. Be not adhering to the customs by not adhering to the customs of Moses, society is, they have horrific physical and spiritual problems. And maybe not so much the physical side, but folks, they got spiritual problems. And nowadays, what's the new one that's causing spiritual problems with our younger people? Anywhere from, well, probably today, 5 years old, up to adults in the last 10 years. I would assume social services just beside themselves, or it just means all the more business for them. This thumb business, these kids are hooked on this stuff. They are hooked on it. These games. So the customs of our country, and it's worldwide, is causing a lot of spiritual problems. Practice of these customs was never forbidden. It's not forbidden. Paul's opposition was for those imposing it as a means of salvation. You can do those things, but you're not saved by those things. Must needs come. Verse 22. Must needs come together, for they will hear you. All right, the multitude may as well come now, because eventually everyone will hear you in town. They must needs come together to hear you on these topics. So let's just have it over with right now, and let's not put this off. All right, the reasoning of Paul, our 8th point, verses 23 through 26. Now, a person can argue and say, well, there's another reason. This is probably the most logical reason why Paul did this. He has this vow, they shave their head, they're bringing an offering, whatever. Verses 23 through 24. We have 4 men here who have a vow on them. Them take, purify thyself with them, and be at charges with them. Be at charges with them, meaning he's footing the bill. Paul's going to put the bill on them, that they may shave their heads, and all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning thee are nothing, but that thou thyself also walkest orderly and keepest the law. So nobody can accuse Paul of being anti-Moses if Paul takes those who have a vow, purifies themselves, be at charges with them. In other words, he shares in the expense, shaves their heads, walking orderly, keeping the law. So the reasoning of Paul, nothing changed in 9, and it shows that in Acts 15, when this was said that the Gentiles are not to eat things offered to idols and so on, what the Jews are going to do, what the Gentiles are going to be permitted to do, is nothing changes in 9 years since the Jerusalem Council. In other words, they really didn't grow at all. It's just status quo, same as the usual things. It's kind of like when we say an older person gets saved. If they're Roman Catholic, what does an older person generally do? Now they get saved. We say they get saved. They bow the knee, they say the prayer, and they're older. What do they normally do? They kind of hang on to their old customs. My accountant did that. She got saved later in life, and she hung on. And that night she came to church, and my preacher just preached her right out of there. Instead of sticking with his lesson, I knew what his lesson was. He went for the Pope and the priest and the church and just railed on him. And right after service, she said to me, "I'll never come back here again." She had just prayed. And she hung on to that Catholic church to the end. But she always loved the Lord. Remember that one woman at Walton Manor? She said, "Wherever Jesus preached, I love to be there." I can't think of her name right now. She was there forever. Remember her? No, I don't think it was Ruth. It could have been. And she was Catholic. But they tend to not change. And these people did not change. Number 6, this is, what's in number 6? We don't have to go there. They took a vow. They take a vow. We say Jesus never took that vow. There's no record. That's the Nazarenes. So they would, pardon? Nazarites. From Nazarites. I count them as one and the same. And you don't. I don't know. Well, let's go back there. Number 6, 13 and 15. And this is the law of the Nazarite. All right? Verse 15, a basket of unleavened bread, cakes of fine flour mingled with oil, wafers of unleavened bread anointed with oil, their meat offerings, their drink offerings, and so on and so forth. They're supposed to do this, and this is what they're doing. The idea is that they're performing that. So he's walking this thin line. He's walking a thin line. We could go as far as to say he's walking this thin line doing this, pacifying the multitude, keeping his conscience clear. By the way, one of those Gentiles, Nebuchadnezzar, it wasn't Nebuchadnezzar, it was one of the generals got saved. Something had happened to him. When he went back, and he said when the commander goes back in there, and I go with him, he was talking about holding the staff, is, "Lord, forgive me for going in there." Do you remember that story? One of those Gentiles, like one of those Babylonians, and he says, "Forgive me if he gets saved." I don't know, is it, who had the leprosy? Naaman. Is it Naaman? Captain of the host, and he says, "Forgive me if I go back in there." One of them do that. So he's walking this thin line in order to pacify the multitude and to keep his conscience clear. And it's aborted. He never fulfills this. So another thought I read is that God ended this so that he wouldn't cross a line. God cut it short so he wouldn't accomplish this. Acts 13, verse 39. By him all that believe are justified from all things from which he could not be justified by the law of Moses. All right, you can't be he's not going to cross that line, saying that you're justified by the law of Moses. Hebrews 10, verses 8 through 12. Above, when he said, "Sacrifice and offering and burnt offerings and offerings for sin thou wouldest not, neither hast thou pleasure therein, which are offered by the Lord. All right? So, just go to verse 12 then. But this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down on the right hand of God. So Jesus is the offering. All that other offering is meaningless. He's walking this thin line. He's fulfilling his role in what he states in 1 Corinthians 9, 20 through 23, becoming all things to all men. Paul's conscience is clear, and we're going to stop there. We went over, so let's stop there. He's fulfilling this. His conscience is clear, and I'm going to look up that Nazarene thing. Have you read that someplace?
That's right. It's forming to the Bible. And that's the reading is started to come from the other.
I've read that somewhere.
Yeah, it's in, yeah.
No, wait a minute. Now I say it's like a Bedfordite. A Bedfordite and a Bedfordite.
Well, an Nazarite, that's the term they use for the person who takes the vow. But they don't use that term for the person who takes the vow. That's
I'm going to look it up. Let me look it up and do a little reading on that. But I'll look that up. And if I forget, and don't bring it up next week, remind me. And I'll look it up. I'll do a little reading on that. All right. Preaching in 15.